machine, we saw that we need a special type for the input.
So here's the statement for the universal Turing machine. We're saying there exists one Turing machine called the universal Turing machine. And what does it take as input? It takes as input I'm going to put little quotes in here. I just noticed that little quotes in here. It takes the description of a Turing machine M and an input to the Turing machine M. And what it does on this input is it simulates M and I. So what the output of universal on M and I should be is what M does on I. I really don't know how he does this. All right. People kind of following that? So we can play the first order logic game, right? We have to construct this universal Turing machine, right? And then the adversary gives us the M and the I, right? And then we have to prove that what the universal does on M and I is the same as what M does on I, right? They're following lock and lock. So if we make the same sort of notes we made before, so the adversary comes up with M knowing what our universal Turing machine is, right? So you can guess, since the adversary tends to be evil, you can guess that M is going to have far more states than the universal Turing machine does, right? Are people generally getting this, or is this just way over everybody's head? How are people doing with these slides? How many people just don't understand this first order logic stuff? All right. You don't understand it either?
Well, you see, I find it hard to write and listen at the same time, so sometimes...
Well, then I can't have any memory for you. We might even have a person taking notes for us. Somewhere. Yes.
Do you use like induction to do this?
We do use induction. Loop invariance is basically induction. Any specific questions, or should I just sort of state it again?
So like after we just learned what the universal TM is, can we just like get an example as to what it's currently like trying to do, like on an input, on a given input, we get an output.
You mean the universal
So
machine?
we can actually get the picture of what's it trying to do and something like that. For a universal TM, yes.
So we went through sort of an example, but
Sort of an example.
I'm going to collect various questions and see if I can possibly answer some of these. Yeah.
One thing that I'm confused about is how it simulates a regular Turing machine. Like, I can't wrap my head around the concept of it describing a Turing machine. Like, what does it output the states that the other Turing machine has, or that's
right. Anything that can help me get you to understand first order logic?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we give the universal Turing machine.
Yeah.
And that simulates the individual Turing machine, which is much bigger than the universal one.
Yeah.
So if it's supposed to simulate a bigger one, how do we give it first? I don't understand that part.
All right.
One click for the description, one click for the input, and one click for the output.
So, problem P, let's say, is sorting. Everybody agrees that sorting is computable, right? Why is sorting computable? Because there exists a machine, namely that for all inputs, the output of the machine is the same as the output of the problem. Right? Right. So people getting this sort of first order logic thing? We say there exists one machine, namely quicksort, merge sort, bubble sort, that for every input, you have to fix the machine, right? And that for that fixed machine, the machine has to solve sorting for every input. Is anybody any questions about this?
Wait, you just said that there exists a machine that can solve any kind of input?
It can solve sorting. Here, this is sorting, right? For any input. You give me any, what's the input going to be? It's going to be a bunch of numbers. And what's the output for sorting? It's those numbers sorted. What should the machine do? It should do the same thing. Right? How would the game go? The game would go, I don't know why you gave me 3 chairs to trip on. All right, the game, we always read from left to right, right? And if it exists, then what do we have to do? We have to come up with it, right? So we're going to say let M be, no?
A machine.
Machine.
What machine?
Sorting machine.
Which bubble sort? Why bubble sort? Because it's a real bad sorting algorithm,
It is.
right? And then then we go to the next thing. And what do we do here? Let I be an arbitrary input to sorting. Right? And then we have to prove that bubble sort on I gives you the same answer as required. Right? Everybody get that? And you'll note the way this game works is that the adversary, when he comes up with I, already knows what my machine is. Right? So, for example, my machine might be, the first line of the machine might say, well, if the input is 5, 2, 3, then the output is 2, 3, 5. But I'm glad I have you guys on my side, right? So I could design a machine that works for specific inputs. But then, when the adversary gives me an input, do you think the adversary is going to give me one that my Turing machine is designed for? No, it's an adversary, right? He's going to give me a bad input. Sorry about that. You okay? Between me and the machine, we're lost.
What about, like, so a -1 as an example?
-1. Where is the -1?
So that'd be an example of something that's a bad one?
Oh, no, just one that my machine hasn't handled. I handled whatever I said, and we could, that, and give me a different input. Some input I haven't thought of. Right? The whole point is, I have to design the Turing machine to handle every input. Right? There exists a machine, there exists a Marilyn Monroe that loves every boy. Right? This algorithm bubble sort, he can sort out any input. Right? Everybody getting that? And that's the exact same thing we're writing here. Here we're saying there exists one universal Turing machine. I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you it has 3 tapes. It's going to have the alphabet characters are going to be 0, 1, open bracket, close bracket, and comma. That's what we're going to allow it to write on the tape. We're going to design what it does, right? And then, after we designed it what it does, the adversary is going to come up with an input, a Turing machine in. I mean, what is it supposed to do? I come up with one universal Turing machine, no matter what the adversary comes up with. Adversary comes up with an M and an I, just a Turing machine and an input I, and what I have to do is simulate M and I, right? What my universal guy has to do. And the reason it's hard is because when I construct my universal Turing machine and I give it a million states, the adversary is going to give me a Turing machine in that has a billion states, right? So my Turing machine, the blackboard, the two-bear, the finite state control can't even know what state it is in, right? Does that make sense?
So my question was, we proved that for every problem there is a Turing machine that solves it.
No, that's not true. The halting problem doesn't have a Turing machine that solves it.
So we saw that the universal Turing machine can simulate any Turing machine.
Yes.
And we saw with the 3 bands and this alpha.
Yes.
And we saw that for every multi-band Turing machine, there is a second band Turing machine that does the same.
Yeah.
So how could we do a single band universal Turing machine?
Well, you're asking a question that's sort of off. I'm more focused on, do people understand the first order logic? All right? So certainly we could combine to answer your question. This universal Turing machine is a 3-tape Turing machine, but we showed that any 3-tape Turing machine can be simulated by a 1-tape Turing machine. So you can have a 1-tape universal Turing machine. You just can. You might have to put the description of in here and follow it by the input here, and then you do it, right? But that's not. How many people? Anybody not understand this first order logic? Let's not have questions off. Let's have questions, first order logic questions.
So my question is, with the earlier example that you gave us,
Uh-huh.
where you say that there is this machine that for every input, the machine can solve the sorting problem.
Yes.
By the same logic, you're trying to transfer it over to a universal Turing machine, saying that there exists a universal Turing machine that for every input of for a specific universal Turing machine, what exactly?
No, this is just saying the input to the universal Turing machine is a description of a Turing machine in an input.
So then, in that case, you're saying that there exists a universal Turing machine that for every type of, for all types of inputs for that machine, it can solve everything and simulate that.
Yeah, this is the exact same line. The only thing I'm changing is from sorting, I'm changing the universal problem. You know, what's the universal problem? The universal problem takes as inputs the description of a Turing machine and an input I, and it simulates M on I. That's the universal Turing problem. Right, so maybe I should add that to the slide. First define the universal problem. And then this line is really identical to this line. Does that make sense? Any more questions about the first order logic kind of stuff? Should we go back to the single multi-tape one and check that one? So here, it's right before you. I really do think that learning first order logic will help you in all of sort of math, computer science life. It's if you want to understand a statement, you want to be able to write it down what your statement is you're trying to prove in first order logic, and then the proof sort of follows naturally, right? What we're trying to say is that you give me for every multi-tape Turing machine, you give me any multi-tape Turing machine, right? There exists a single-tape Turing machine, right? So given this one, I construct this one. And what will this one do? It will solve the same problem. Namely, for every input, the output of the two things will be the same. Right? Are people following this first order? Any questions about first order logic? You might want to go back and watch the video of the first order logic video again.